Welcome into Out of Order, everyone. My name is Ben Mayer.
My name is Anthony Buono.
Today we're going to be talking about elections that just went down in India. Now, these are really interesting to me because we got some unexpected results. So in India, the ruling party, the BJP, is a Hindu nationalist party, and it's led by their Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Polls leading up to the vote, and exit polls, in fact, said that the BJP was going to win an enormous majority, a supermajority, actually.
Massive victory.
Yes. And that was going to have real implications for the types of policies they might see. But in fact, it looks like they're actually losing their parliamentary majority. So they're going to have to create coalitions with other parties to rule the government, which is something that Modi hasn't had to do yet in his first 2 terms as prime minister. So first, I want to go over why they underperformed so much. And there are a few reasons that I want to list through. One, they're too Hindu nationalist. Modi specifically. He made comments on the campaign trail that people called hate speech against Muslim minorities.
There you go.
And Muslims make up about 20% of the Indian population. I thought that this wouldn't really hurt him that much.
I thought so too. I mean, we were talking about the Indian elections probably 2 weeks ago because there was violence going on in one of the regions in the Northeast. And there was like hardcore violence. People were getting killed. Houses were getting burned down. And the Indian government had to take some type of action to rerun the vote because so many of the polling places got ransacked. And Modi was so slow to respond to any of the calls of violence on the Hindu nationalist side, right? That he didn't want to respond. And we honestly thought that was going to help him electorally because we thought that the Indian population was more Hindu nationalist than I guess they are at this moment.
Well, the country is still like 80% Hindu.
Oh, yeah.
So we thought it was really going to play well. But where we're ending up is it looks like it actually hurt him. He also used pretty incendiary rhetoric against the opposition on the campaign trail. And so what it seems to me is that this population is more interested. They are more married to democracy and fair elections. And they might be a little bit more averse to a strongman than we thought they were.
They also might be more okay with an ethnically diverse democracy than I thought.
Yes.
Right? Like the fact that they're okay with a multicultural system and continuing with a multicultural system makes me really happy to see. At least that it still has such a strong base that it could stop the BJP from getting an outright majority.
Yes, I like that too. And the other thing is India is still extremely poor. It's extremely poor. Unemployment is around 8%. They deal with really bad inflation, specifically food inflation, which in a really poor population is more important than any other type of inflation.
Sure.
And Modi hasn't, even though India's economy is now growing fast, it hasn't quite hit the metrics, the goals that Modi set out at the beginning of his presidency. And because of that, I think that it's part of the story for why he didn't get as much support as we were expecting.
And Modi's economic model is not special to the BJP party. I think India is going to grow no matter who leads it.
Yes.
Like they are an economy primed to be the manufacturing hub in the next 2 decades, right? That is what they're going to be.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who's in power, doesn't matter what ideology takes root, whether it's Marxism or free market capitalism, that country is going to be a hub of manufacturing that exports stuff to the world.
It will be. I will say that I'm going to bring up some points later on that we'll discuss whether policy might play a big role, because I think it will really affect whether this GDP growth rate hovers around 5% or it's closer to 10, which China had in its highest growth years.
Well, let's go there.
Okay.
What do you think is the difference there? What do you think is the difference that needs to be made? Do you think it's investments in infrastructure? What do you think?
I think they need to open up the market more. So there are a few laws that make it very difficult to do business in India. One are labor laws. Right now, the national law restricts companies with over 300 employees from firing workers without express consent from the government. I think that makes it very hard for people to do business there. And they're worried about getting stuck, not being able to cut costs.
Okay.
Also, there are strict laws on land acquisition, specifically on farmland, which basically make it really hard to purchase any kind of agricultural land except for public use. Basically, India has all of these laws that are relics of a time when they were, I shouldn't even say relics of a time. There's still a majority agricultural-based economy. And so the laws are meant to build and protect farmers. The problem is that creates unstable food supplies. The government goes back and forth on whether exports are allowed and whether they're not because of this level of food inflation that's very volatile. And so they're leaning towards manufacturing, but they're not able to lean as far into it as they should be able to, or that as they should be to grow the economy faster.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to protect farmers, and also because they put tariffs on input goods, which you always talk about.
I always say that's the worst thing you could do for an economy. Being
a bad thing, and it means that it's harder to boost manufacturing there because they can't source cheap materials.
Yeah. I will say one of the big moves that I think India will do over the next decade is going to be create the largest national healthcare system in the world. I think Modi has made it a goal to get healthcare to every Indian. Yeah. And they've recently developed airdrop hospitals where you can drop a hospital out of an airplane, it lands, parachutes and all, and it becomes a field hospital right in the middle of nowhere.
That's insane.
That's awesome, dude.
That is so cool.
So I think that I think that's going to do a lot to improve their human capital.
True.
I think that's going to do a lot to improve that.
But do you think they will? Do you think they will be able to? Like, it's going to take a lot of money and execution to do that, you know?
Well, I think what's going to happen is the manufacturing increasing is going to fuel and fund the increase in healthcare. That's what I think is going to happen. And I think that's what we're going to see over the next decade and a half.
And it's just a matter of the rate that it goes.
Yeah, and I think they do need to open up more to the market. I think the United States is trying the best they can to make that happen.
Yes,
right?
They absolutely are. So besides the economic portion, though, I think the political and like the human rights and freedoms and the level of democracy that India is the other really important thing here.
Absolutely.
Because if the BJP ran away with a 2/3 majority, like polling showed they were going to in this election, they could change the constitution unilaterally. And under Modi's rule and the BJP, India has already been in a bit of a democratic backslide.
Yeah, for sure.
It is the country that now turns off the internet the most frequently to pacify the public and take oxygen out of protests. They've cracked down on critical journalists, and an amendment to a law in 2019 granted the government broad authority to prosecute people on the grounds of terrorism if they are likely to threaten or likely to strike terror, which led them to holding a great example. One person sat in jail for 7 years just awaiting trial to be acquitted once trial came around. So they've tightened their grip because they can, but I think this is going to help tighten the reins.
Yeah, I think this is going to force the BJP to moderate.
Yes.
Right.
No, it is. It is. The only problem is whether it'll make it harder to get through the difficult economic reforms that might be the most helpful.
Sure.
Yeah.